Hi guys, this is my second video for the emotion coaching training. So this is a follow-on from part one where we looked at how emotion coaching can really support brain development for our children or children that you are working with, whether you are a teacher or support staff in school or anybody who is working with children. So today we are going to have a little look at the different styles and different approaches that we can take when we are trying to support children or young people with their emotions. So again, I'm going to just ask you to please try not to feel guilty if you think, oh, I use that style and, I feel really bad because it's not effective for my child or for the children that I look after. So please try to see this as a learning experience. Nobody is perfect. Nobody, unless they are, a natural with emotion coaching and that they've basically been brought up to be emotion coached themselves, nobody will find this easy, and we will have slip-ups and we will find ourselves reverting back to type, to our default of how we were raised as children. So please be patient with yourselves. Please just see this as, like I said, a learning experience, and hopefully use this session as an audit for your approaches and styles that you use when supporting young people with their emotions. So I'm going to go through the different styles that I have on this board in the background and just have a look at what those styles might look like and how they affect a child's emotional development. So the first one I've got here is the disapproving style, and you might find when I talk through these, you might find that sometimes you use a disapproving style, sometimes you might use a dismissive style, sometimes you might use the laissez-faire style. So you might find that you dip in and out of different styles, and sometimes you might find that you naturally emotion coach, and maybe you find that you favour one style over the others. So we're going to have a little talk through what they look like and, like I've said, how they affect children. So the scale we have here is we have styles that are low in empathy and styles that are high in empathy. We have styles that are low in guidance and styles that are high in guidance. And what we're aiming for is emotion coaching, but what we're aiming for is high guidance, high empathy. So we want to really understand and validate our children's emotions, but we also want to guide them. So we don't want them stuck in those emotions. We don't want to validate them to the point where that's all they feel, they don't move on. So we want to guide them in moving on from those feelings and processing them positively and effectively, which is where emotion coaching falls. So we'll go through them now. So the disapproving style kind of falls in the high guidance, so there is a lot of guidance for children when you use that style, but it's low in empathy, so there is not a lot of understanding when we use a disapproving approach with children. So if we are tending to use a disapproving style, we might disapprove of negative emotions. We might see them as a weakness or a lack of control, and we can be very critical and very intolerant of a child who's expressing those feelings, and we want it to stop. We might punish negative emotions, reprimand children if they're showing challenging emotions, because we want to control the situation. We want those emotions to go away. We tend to focus on the behaviour rather than the emotions that are driving the behaviour. So we will literally take the tip of the iceberg, and we might say things like they are disobedient, they are rude, they are angry all the time, they don't listen. So we are literally just focusing on behaviour. Whereas hopefully we're getting the understanding now that emotions drive behaviour, so it's so important that we understand emotions if we want the behaviour to change. So with a disapproving style, we're heavily focused on behaviour rather than emotion. We might see the behaviour as manipulative, so we might say things like, oh, they're doing it on purpose because they want me to do A, B or C, or they're doing it for attention. We might become suspicious of children and their motives for their behaviour and judge them in that way, instead of looking at it as a behaviour that the child is incapable of regulating because they haven't been taught how to understand their emotions and therefore change their behaviour. And with this style, with the disapproving style, the adult is quite needy of control. We are quite, if we're using the style, we want to control the situation. We kind of want to we want to make the child do what we want them to do, and we sometimes don't focus on, like I've mentioned, what has driven that behaviour. We maybe aren't interested in what's driven the behaviour, because when we are disapproving, we just see it as bad behaviour that needs to be stopped, and we want to take control over that. And we might see, by being disapproving, we are toughening up the child. So it's very much a tough love approach, where a child is kind of taught that their emotions are weak, and we've got to be tough if we want to face this world. And just to mention, all of the styles that we have here that might not be effective come from the best intention. So we love our children, as teachers, we love the children that we look after, so we want what's best for them. And when we use a disapproving approach, it's often because we think it's what is best for the child. So we might think that the world is a really hard place. We might be worried as parents about our children misbehaving in school and getting into trouble, and we don't want that for our children because we care about them so much. So we get to our default, which may be how we were brought up as children, and we try to control the child. We try to control the behaviour, and ultimately we try and squash down those emotions with all the best intention. So that is our disapproving approach. It's low in empathy, not a lot of understanding of emotion there, very high in guidance, very high in adult control. Okay, so the dismissing style of responding to a child who's showing challenging behaviour is, again, low in empathy, quite low in understanding of the child's emotions, but it's also low in guidance. So if we adopt this approach, it's often because we want the emotions to go away. We feel very uncomfortable personally with intense emotion. For whatever reason, we are all coming from our own experiences. For whatever reason, we don't feel comfortable when children express heightened emotions. We want them to get over it quickly. We often think that if we give it too much attention, it will get worse. So we try to just ignore it and hope it goes away. We might think that, like I've said, if we make a fuss of the child, or if we try and get them to open up or talk about it, it makes it more real, and that can be very uncomfortable for us. So we become dismissive. We might say things like, oh, it's no big deal, you'll be fine, it's okay, let's move on. And we might have a need to rescue the child from the situation. So for example, if a child breaks a toy and is crying, our instant response might be, we'll get you another one, we'll buy you another one, it's okay, we'll fix this. But without giving the child the chance to experience strong emotions, process them, and realise, actually, I can get over that, that's not a biggie. But we cut the process down, we want to fix it, and we sort of deny the child the experience of problem solving for themselves. And we might use logic or distraction to try and calm a child's emotion, whatever that may be. So it might be like, come on, let's go out, let's go to the park, or let's do this, or let's do some baking, or let's not think about it, don't worry about it, those kind of things. So we're not validating our children's feelings, and we are literally pretending that the emotion isn't there. We want it to be gone. Again, like the disapproving approach, with all the best intentions. So we want our children to be happy. We don't want them to be experiencing strong feelings. So our default might be to do whatever we can to pretend they're not there, to make them go away, because we want our children to feel better, and we think that's the way to do it. Okay, so the problem with the disapproving and the dismissive approach to responding to our children is we encourage our children to then not trust their feelings. So because with the disapproving approach, the adult is in control, it takes all of that learning experience away from the child. With the dismissive approach, we are basically telling them that their feelings aren't real and they're not valid. So a child might come to think, well, what am I feeling? And, you know, am I weird for feeling like that? We're denying, with the high guidance, with the high element of control, and by dismissing, we're denying the child the experience of feeling emotions and processing them, which is something that, to be a mentally well adult, it's a skill that we need, because as we are older, we are responsible for our feelings that lead to our behaviour. So we need to have ways, an internal model that knows how to process feelings. So if we've been denied that experience and that practice as a child, we can't do it as adults. We find it very difficult, and that's kind of what leads to some of our mental health struggles. So again, don't feel bad if this is these approaches are what you've done, because it is never too late to tweak your style and to audit your toolbox of approaches. Along similar lines, if a child hasn't processed emotions, like I was talking about in my other video, their brain and their internal model, their internal approach isn't formed, so they have no way of regulating, they have no way of calming their body. The vagus nerve, the vagal tone that I talked about in my last video, learns responses from the body. So if we have coached, as we will talk about in my next video, the emotion coaching, if we've been coached through that response, our body has learned that response. But if we have had that sort of taken away from us, we haven't learned that response, and we will struggle to self-regulate. When we suppress our natural emotions, which both of these styles encourage, they don't encourage a dialogue about about emotions. They don't encourage learning about what our feelings are and what they're called and what they feel like. And because they don't do that, the feelings become suppressed. A child doesn't understand them, and it can lead to great feelings of guilt and shame and anger because they feel like their emotions are not okay. And we don't want any of that, definitely not with our children. Okay, so the last approach that I'm going to look at today, because I will look at the emotion coaching in detail in my next 3 videos. So the approach that I'm going to look at now is the laissez-faire approach to responding. And this one is very high in empathy, but it's low in guidance. And a laissez-faire approach is where the adult is overwhelmed by the emotions of the child. Again, we're all coming from our own experiences, and just as an aside, it's a brilliant idea if you work with children, or if you're a parent or a carer, to look into your own feelings, you know, do a bit of digging and do a bit of resolving of your own behaviour, feelings and thought patterns, so that you can see where you're coming from, because often our children will trigger us and we can't see it because we don't understand our own feelings. It's something that wasn't encouraged to us when we were children. So I really recommend that if you are doing anything where you are influencing people, look at your own emotions first. It's like putting on your oxygen mask before you support other people. You need to keep yourselves safe and regulated so that you can be a maximum, so that basically you can maximize your effectiveness when supporting young people. So with the laissez-faire approach, overwhelmed, it's too much, the adult may start mirroring the behaviour of the child. So if a child is extremely angry, they may become extremely angry. If a child is really sad, the adult might become really sad. Oh wow, that's so terrible, I feel so sad about that. And sort of meeting them where they are, loads of empathy. You know, a child knows that the adult gets their emotion because they're literally joining them in that emotion, but there is no guidance, there's no sort of I'm gonna support you with this, I've got you, I will guide you through this. No judgment at all, because it is hard to support young people. Young people come with so many challenges, so because we are humans too, like I've said, we get triggered. We need our own space to regulate ourselves. So please be kind to yourself. Please don't think, oh, I'm useless, because sometimes I get overwhelmed with emotion. Just like I say, use this as a bit of a heads up, as a bit of a, oh, okay, I see what I did there. Maybe I can do something about that. If you are an adult that becomes overwhelmed by heightened emotions quite easily, there is so much support out there for you in forms of different mental health strategies, different calming techniques, and some of the calming techniques that I've shown on here that I use with children and adults are effective. You know, like pampering yourselves for free. Pampering doesn't always have to cost any money. You know, have a bubble bath if you can, and basically sort of do things for yourself so you're nice and calm. And also there is like therapy, you can look into your own things, like I've said, do a bit of digging. So please don't judge yourself if you are often taking the laissez-faire approach where you are feeling the emotions of the children a little bit too much. When this happens, when we are laissez-faire with the children, the behaviour will escalate because the child doesn't feel like they're being contained. So that is a problem with that approach. Okay, so we've looked at those three. If I was running a course and you were coming to the course, I would say spend the next week not judging yourself, but just thinking, am I doing that? Am I being dismissive? Am I being disapproving? And when I was writing these down, I was, it was a good check for me, because I was thinking, oh, actually, sometimes I still do some of these things. And it's really good to be reminded of them and to self-check, really. So spend the next week, if you like, thinking about how you are responding to children's heightened emotions. And my next video on emotion coaching step 1 will be up tomorrow, so you can start having a look at that if you like, and maybe tweaking your approach a little bit if you need to. Hope it's been useful, and I will catch you later. Bye bye.